started thinking about moving, we were just looking around at the properties for sale in various areas, and this stood out. We saw it.
I'm not quite sure how we found out about this development.
It was purely from the website. I was just browsing, looking for houses to buy, or to look at rather, and came across this wonderful picture of this Green Street development. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it. It seemed absolutely perfect for what we were looking for.
So we were definitely taking a bit of a gamble, but I just thought, well, if eco houses need small windows, if it's got little small windows and it's dingy, then that's the sort of houses people have got to live in, and we're just going to put up with it.
It was the right time. It was on show. We could go to the show home, have a look around.
I'd never thought of a new build house, I really hadn't, and I think the eco features kind of made me more interested than it being a new build. But I really liked the idea of it being sort of a new community, and we honestly thought that we would just come and have a fun look around an eco house. We never thought that we'd be able to A, afford it, or B, that there'd be so much demand we wouldn't stand a chance of being able to get into it. So I think eco features are something you think you'll only get in a kind of grand designs thing. They don't sound like a normal person would be able to kind of get, or that you'd have to live in social housing for a council to pay to put solar panels in.
Well, firstly, it was the modernity of it, because we'd been looking at fairly traditional, ordinary houses, which were fine in themselves, very nice, some of them. But I liked the cube shape of these houses, and we like modern things. And I was incredibly impressed with the external appearance of the houses. And then when I started reading about the various green features of them, I was even more impressed. I thought, this is marvellous. I do hope we're not too late.
I had thought I would love to have an eco house, but it'll never happen. So when I got the leaflet and read it instead of just putting it straight in the bin as usual, and I was really delighted when I saw that they were big enough for 4 people, and they were reasonably close to West Bridgford.
I quite like the modern look, so although it's very different to the old Victorian style, there's something quite special about this whole development, I think.
And I didn't really know what it meant at first. I thought it meant like a little shed with eco stuff in or something. But then when I came to see the houses, they're actually really modern and they had really good features and stuff. So
I think it felt like home really quickly. We moved in just before Christmas, and we were able to have our first family Christmas with my mum coming up to stay and my brother, and I'd never lived anywhere that was big enough to be able to have those people round, and everyone was just totally in love with the house. You can't really see features like you can't see triple glazing, and you can't see a timber frame, and you can't really see a heat ventilation recovery unit. So it's not, I don't think you're ever going to walk into a house like this and go, oh yeah, I'm going to buy this because of these features, because they're just not that visible and tangible. I think that's the best way to almost be selling them is to have them as this great add-on, but you're not going to sell a house based on them. People are going to want to buy a house because of the way it looks and the way they feel they can live in it.
In some ways, because it's not really a fully fledged eco house, I think, and therefore in a lot of ways I'd say that the house is not that different from a normal house, and we would have ourselves put up with a lot more eco features just to try and see what it was like, or try and live an eco life. So it's not that different from living in a normal house, to be honest.
I think I would have liked to have been consulted about what appliances we were given, because I certainly wouldn't have chosen a dishwasher or a combined fridge and freezer. And at the moment the fridge and freezer are just used as storage space. I think there are some things that could have been better, like there's no bike storage here that's really useful. There are some outside storage spaces, but there's only enough room for one bike, isn't there, in one of the stores? Not 2. So we've had to dismantle our bikes and put them in there, and probably they'll never see the light of day again.
I just don't think about it as an eco home, actually. It's a home.
Yeah, I think you're right. You don't think about it as an eco home. That's almost a given. What is an eco home anyway? the balance probably is right. You're not introduced with these properties into an eco house, which is a 22nd century concept. It's very much a 20th/21st century concept of a traditional house, but dramatically improved in terms of the usage of energy, insulation, light and airy space, plenty of glass to give you a sense of space. All of those issues are done pretty well, but you're not being asked to take on board entirely new living concepts. So I think it's probably fair to say they've got the balance about right.
I'm sure more people will be attracted to living like this, and so more will be built. I thought that you could use any bulbs, so I tried to put a bulb into a fitting that I'd bought from my old house, which is plugged into a socket, not in the ceiling fittings. And I tried 2 bulbs to see if they worked, and they did work, but then they flashed and banged and completely tripped the circuit.
It's very important to rely less on fossil fuels. In our opinion, humanity is facing catastrophe. It's slowly engulfing us, in fact, and we've got to do as much as possible to mitigate the effects of climate change.
We're not being frugal or mean or anything, or living a reduced life. It really feels like a liberation, really, for us.
My attitude towards eco-living is more to do with just maintaining a small presence on the planet, really. Human beings outnumber most other animals apart from ants and insects, and we do an awful lot of destruction.
I think it is quite important to rely less on fossil fuels. However, it's fairly difficult to be non-reliant completely on anything like that. This house, although it has the solar panels, still relies on gas for the central heating. I'd certainly like to use less fossil fuels, but as I say, I think it's difficult.
It is quite important to me. I consider it quite important to who I am, really, that, you know, I have always tried to be quite sustainable and sustainable, and I don't drive a car, even though we have a car.
The green, and just because the nature of the house, and not using too much electricity or gas.
This house definitely makes it easier to live a sustainable lifestyle because it's got lots of features to help you use less energy. And it doesn't put temptations in your way like a dryer, which I know my sons would certainly stick everything in the dryer. You know, even if it was one pair of underpants, they would dry it in the dryer.
Does this house help us to live sustainably? I suppose so, in the way that it's very, very well insulated.
Yes. Yes, it's extremely warm.
We've been green, so to speak, despite some of the features of the house as well, with the fridge, the freezer and the dishwasher, which we just don't use.
Especially living here and it being good that we're right sort of in the city, we don't use the car really at weekends.
The fact I can actually walk into Bridgeford without using a car, I suppose, that's another important thing, isn't it? The footprint, the carbon footprint is becoming less.
Just the location makes it a lot easier to live a green lifestyle. I mean, actually, to tell you the truth, a lot of the jobs I've done you've got to be a car user. So, I mean, it's another of those things where it actually takes a shift in society, if you like, rather than just one individual.
So here we have the thermostat control for the whole house. All the radiators got individual thermostats on, but this allows us to set the whole thing. So generally we've been setting it at maybe 18 on the colder days, but we've been quite comfortable sort of down to 16 as well, so it's kept it quite warm, but 18 is probably more general what we've had it on, and then used in conjunction with the timer box behind you. We just have that coming on at different points of the day.
I look at the thermometers, and there's a thermometer upstairs as well when we've got the heating on, to make sure I'm not being overindulgent. So if it gets above 20, I turn the heating down.
Action.
Yeah, as far as I know, this is no different to any other central heating control system. You've got options to set different zones at different temperatures, so you can set up stairs lower than downstairs, which I guess is energy saving, although we use the upstairs rooms a lot, so we don't do that. And you can have it coming on and off at different times of the day, but that's just like any other heating system.
We're still doing without our fridge and freezer, and it's working very well. So we give back the cost of storing all our food to the shop rather than to ourselves. We just go out each day and buy the things we need, and food lasts 2 or 3 days.
There are other items in the kitchen which we don't use, one of which is the dishwasher. We've never used that. As there are only 2 of us and we're here all day, it doesn't really, it's not really very useful to us, and also I don't think we'd want to use it anyway because of the energy and the water required, although it is very energy efficient.
So I've tried to make myself learn everything properly. For instance, using the microwave as an oven, whereas, you know, before I probably would have been too lazy to do that. I've had a microwave with an incorporated oven before, but I read I heard on the radio that using an oven is one of your main sources of using power when you're cooking. It uses far, far more power than using the hobs.
I'd hope that the bills would probably be 30% cheaper. I'd hope for more than that, but I would really like, if they were 30% cheaper, well, that would be definitely worth moving here for.
And I said, what do you think the heating and or energy usage might be per month? And I can remember this figure being quoted. Well, we think it might be as little as £20 a month. Well, I got quite excited about that because I thought, well, if it's £20 a month, we're on a winner here. To date, we have not yet seen a figure that's anything like that. But what I would say is it's probably going to represent, over the first 2 years, at least a 50% saving on what we were spending before. The feed-in tariff figures were something that I have to say that both Julie and I, and for that matter many of the other residents, found very difficult to absorb. It's a hugely complicated set of figures which is really not designed for the consumer to understand.
I think there was a suggestion that it might be a third of what we were paying or a quarter of what we were paying in total when they kind of balanced up the gas and electric and what we'd get back from the solar panels. So I mean that was a massive kind of like, oh, this looks like a worthwhile project. And I think the gas prices have gone up hugely during the time we were in the previous house, and that had made a significant difference to our income, and that was when we were both working.
It's taken me quite a long time to learn to use all the equipment in the house, and probably you caught me out with the air extractor because that was the one that we didn't get a manual for. We had to go and look it up last month, and the one that I still don't know how to use.
I would have really appreciated an informal meeting with someone with the technical knowledge of all of the aspects of this house which are eco-saving devices. I would have loved that to be explained to me in person, because I much prefer personal one-to-one contact to having to just sit on my own and read it. I don't know that I'm using everything right as yet. I really need someone to talk to me about the boiler, to tell me how the boiler works. And I've already talked to the plumber, but I'm obviously I need it to go in more than once.
And up on the roof are the photovoltaic panels, which are invisible to us, and we never do anything to them because we don't have to, so it's really marvellous.
My favourite feature of the house, just over here, is our unit, which tells us how much our electricity panels, which we can't see, are generating. So in there at the end of a hot day with a glass of wine, checking how much, it's usually around 5 kilowatt hours you've generated, so just more than £1 you're getting a day.
We've not had to put the heating on, I don't think, since March, and over on the coldest days it would perhaps be on for an hour, and so it really retains the heat, this house. It's fantastic in that respect.
It's got very clean lines. It's got a lot of windows, a lot of large windows, so they're very light and airy and very, very pleasant to be in. Very well insulated, so even though I haven't actually spent a winter here, it does feel very warm and cosy without being dark and dingy.
And what's especially nice, we like this little touch, is there's the solar tube here, which is channeling sunlight down onto the desk. And it always remains very, very bright here throughout the day, no matter what the weather.
There's been a lot more space than I originally thought, because when we saw it being built, we could see the sort of floor plan as they were building it, and a lot of the rooms looked a bit smaller than we imagined. And everywhere we lived, we were looking at the different dimensions and wondering how big this house was going to be. And it wasn't, none of the dimensions are that big, but it's so well laid out that all the living space is really usable. And even with a family of 4 in here, it never feels like you're in each other's way at all, which I know some houses of this kind of size probably could do.
There's quite a lot of difficulties with the house, not relating it to it being an eco house, but to do with the attention to detail in the design. And then there are a lot of problems with the construction, which may have been partly to do with the fact that for the builder it was totally different to the type of house they were used to building, and they had tremendous difficulties, and especially this was the first phase, but actually all 3 phases I know have got masses of complaints about poor construction. It might be a sexist cliche, but I think they could have had a woman, or if you like, a person who spends a long time in the house and does most of the cooking and cleaning and so on, look over the designs, because you know, some of it wasn't very well thought out. But that was the detail, and it doesn't put me off the house. I still love it, and I definitely still buy it again, even with all the faults.
It's a beautiful place to live. It makes me feel very happy to live here, and yeah, not be cold in the morning.
Has the house met our expectations? Definitely. I mean, sort of gone a bit beyond them in terms of it being a house and having a community.
But this development really makes you feel conscious that you are trying to do something, and I think it should be available to many more people, I think.